We are just waiting for the live to kick in, and then we're going to start. We're going to talk all things getting more responses to outreach, because it is a major challenge for sellers, for business owners, for anybody trying to reach their prospects on LinkedIn. And then we're going to start. We're going to talk all things. We're going to dig in. Let me just get this up and running, and then we'll start today's session where we're really focused on how do we get better and more responses to outreach. A major challenge for sellers. So if you're joining me, say hello in the chat. Thank you for joining. Just to set the scene whilst we're just getting the lives to kick in everywhere, it is never been easier to reach a prospect, and it's also never been harder. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean that with all the tools, all the data, all the access we've got, it's actually getting more and more difficult to get people to respond to our outreach. And you'll have found this, you'll have seen this too, that we're in a situation whereby we have an overload of information in our inboxes, in our LinkedIn DMs, in our WhatsApps. It's everywhere. Marketers and sellers trying to reach decision makers. It's everywhere. And so if you're operating in this environment where it's very noisy, where it's hard to get responses, and let's be honest, you look at how you deal with your own inbox, what do? You probably ignore the majority of what comes in. Why? Because there's so much stuff flowing into your inbox. And so we're ending up in a situation where, despite all of the tools, despite all of that, it's harder. It's more difficult. In fact, HubSpot published a stat that outreach volumes in the last few years has gone up by 70%, but response rates have gone down. So we're doing more and getting less. Now, at the same time, we're hearing about AI and AI-driven outreach. And at least at the moment, a lot of the AI-driven outreach is better than a lot of outreach, but buyers are actually picking up on this doesn't sound right, this doesn't land right, it doesn't sound human. And so there's already, despite how, in one sense, new AI is, there's already a bit of like, yeah, this doesn't feel like a human talking to me, undermining credibility. And so what I'm seeing, and we are going to get into the nitty-gritty of how do we get more responses, but what I'm seeing at the moment is actually, let me just, how did we get here? How did we get here where outreach response rates are so bad? Actually, technology. Yeah, technology got us here. In that email came around, our phones came around, and companies, individuals, sellers decided to play a different game. And I believe for the last 5 or 6 years, we've not been playing a skilled marketing game. We've been playing a volume game. And so we've compensated, and this is collectively everybody, we have compensated by putting a machine gun behind our emails, a machine gun behind our outreach. And what's that's done is actually degraded the quality of the outreach. If you look, and sorry, young people, I'm going to throw some of you under the bus. If you look at what a lot of companies have been doing, is they've got marketing teams writing emails for salespeople to send. And then it's being copied and pasted, copied and pasted, copied and pasted. right? AIs come in and actually can do a better job of that. So it's better than the automation. But the reason why we're in this mess with low response rate is because the tools have been excessively used, and every market, when something new comes along, some innovation, automated outreach, there is obviously a big boom in it, but there's also a correction. And we've got a correction now where actually, because so many people can get to our decision makers, because so many people can get to us, the effectiveness of the channel and those methods and those approaches that worked maybe 12 months ago, 6 months ago, 5 years ago degrade. And so we have to keep innovating to get better responses. And so, of course, AI has provided a innovation on top of that, where we can do personalization at scale, but smarter personalization at scale. But it's still, there's signs that there's a correction in the market that people are going, this feels like AI. It doesn't feel like a human. Now, maybe that will evolve and adapt, but we are still some way from that being anywhere near perfect. And so salespeople watching me, business owners watching me today, you've got to think about your own business and your own career, because if all you're doing is leveraging an AI tool to get meetings booked, and that's what you're doing, you are setting yourself up to be replaced, because anybody can do that. So as a seller, what I'm going to talk about is how you as an individual can have a higher response rate than AI and automation, because one, that will cut through, and two, that's a skill that, frankly, in 5 years' time, a lot of people won't know and won't have. And so it makes you irreplaceable. So when we look at sales, we'll get into the outreach in a second. I've got some things to show you. When we look at sales, we've got to think about what are the bits about sales that will never be replaced by AI and can never be replaced by automation. That is your value proposition as a seller, or as a marketer, or as a business owner. What are the bits about the process that you do better than AI? Now, research, AI is brilliant at. Outreach and tailoring outreach, I'm not so sure, because it misses the emotions, and it's very logical. And often our buyers, there are pain points of the business, there's pain points of the individual, and there's emotion wrapped up in it. And so very often the best outreach messages that get responses are appealing not just to a business problem, to a logical problem. They're actually appealing to an emotional issue as well. So B2B is not just business only. There's politics involved, there's emotion involved, and AI will struggle to pick up on that. And you, as a seller or as an individual, will be able to pick up on that better. So there is this permanence to high quality, high value strategic outreach that will never be replaced by AI. It's not going anywhere. And so if you understand the principles of this high value outreach, you can actually start to think about how my skill set, my performance as a seller in getting responses will be way better. Now, what I thought I'd do is I'd give you some tactical tips and then actually talk about some more strategic things that you can do to actually get better responses. So first off, let me share my screen. Where am I? Share screen. I've got tunnel vision here. So where are we? Right. So when you're thinking about outreaching on LinkedIn, one of the first things you need to consider and really think about is, number one, right, your message has got to resonate. That's not about amazing copy. That's not about being the world's best copywriter. It is about really understanding their needs. And so a message that has those things in it, 3 parts: compliment, a business observation, and speak to their outcome or challenge. That requires you to do some research. For the best outreach, you need to do research. But once we get into that outreach, let's look at some of the mechanics that make that messaging perform better. So number one, and I'm just going to show you this on the screen here, and we'll do it as quickly as we can so we don't. When your prospect gets a message, particularly on LinkedIn, and I'll just show you on the side here, I've got loads of messages here, right? One of the things that people miss is that the subject line on LinkedIn is actually the first few lines of the post, of the copy. So when you're writing your outreach messages, your prospects, without even opening it, will see those first 5-6 words. And so when you do that, they're going to see the first 5 or 6 words in your email, in your LinkedIn message, and they can quickly go, that's a sales message, that's not. So this opener, the opener of your outreach message, yeah, and I'll just show you here, yeah, and I do this all the time. I send messages to our team to see how they come out, right? So here's an example, right? Say something unexpected, or offer first name won't blank you, right? So when I send that, for an example, let me just change that a minute. I'll not put their name in there because it's a member of the team, right? That line there is what they'll see. So like on a social media post, we talk about a hook or an email subject line. On LinkedIn, this line here, this first line you put out, is actually the subject line. So let me just give you some examples here. We'll just push this up here. Look at that. Say something expected, or first name will blank you. Or we'll go, hi, Daryl, hope you are well. Now that is classic opening email, right? We say that on emails, it's nice, it's courteous, it's polite, all of that stuff. But it also is a dead giveaway that the person doesn't know you. It's a dead giveaway that you don't know that person and you're trying to be formally polite. So this first line is actually a pattern interrupt. It's a pattern interrupt. So if you follow a predictable pattern, people will be able to guess what you're saying and what you're doing. So think about that first line as a subject line, and how are you going to say something unusual that will actually get you a response? I have one, because I have these bright shirts. I have one where I say, apologies if your eyes bleed because of my shirts. And I put that at the top. And people go, what is he talking about? And you might go, oh, that sounds unprofessional. Well, think about it like this, right? That first line determines if people open your message. So if you think about this as an actual process, the more people who open that message, the more replies you get. So the more interesting you make that message and that first line, the more opens, which then clicks to more replies, which clicks to more meetings, which clicks to more opportunities. That one thing, that first line, is a pattern interrupt. And so spending the time to think about what does that pattern interrupt look like becomes really, really important. So I would focus on looking at what that is and how you put that together. That's the first one. The first one is that pattern interrupt. Now, the second one is about process. Now, I often say to people, there's 2 ways to make outreach more successful. Number 1 is, can I make that message shit hot? In other words, the best copy I've put together the works. Can I do that? That would be the first option that most people go, how do I improve the message? In actual fact, the most important thing is what you do to improve the messenger, the person who brings the message. You see, one of the things that, if you look at the way email and outreach has changed, is because of the noise in the inbox, all of our inboxes everywhere, we triage our emails, our messages, our communications from people. We triage them. We don't actually deal with them in full. And so what will happen is I'll get a load of emails. I'll wake up in the morning, load of emails, and I will scan through and look for the important ones. And I open and deal with the important ones. Now, in your situation, outreaching to prospects, they will not just look at the subject line and go, you can play some games and put important, final notice. You can put dramatic subject lines, but that can actually anger prospects. And we're also seeing a move away from the more dramatic subject lines to boring subject lines because people are sick of the marketing shizzle. So here's what people do. They're not looking at the subject line in their inbox predominantly. They're looking at the from name. So in LinkedIn messaging, it's the first line is the subject line. So people can gain a lot of knowledge about what you're talking about just by that. But the second piece is the from name. Who is this person? And that one advantage of the prospect being familiar with your name again creates that compounding impact of, I recognize that name. Oh, I'll open the email or I'll open the DM. They open the DM, which means you're going to get more responses. So that trickle down effect, more opens, more responses, more meetings, more opportunities kicks in again. So you as a seller, you as somebody trying to sell to somebody else, one of the most important things you can do is actually make sure that you are known to your prospects, your name is familiar to your prospects before you go in for the kill. So let me give you some examples of that. A lot of people are sending cadences where it's like email after email after email after email after email. There is a truth to the fact that you can't just do one-hit wonder messaging, right? Despite people, that's what people do on LinkedIn. You can't do one-hit wonder messaging. So what you have to do is think about, how can I build name or face recognition with my prospects using LinkedIn before I outreach? This will give you 3 times the response rates. So again, if you think about that compounding benefit of, if your name is known, you get 3 times the response rates. So name is known, you get more opens, you get more replies. More replies means more meetings, which means more opportunities. If you improve the bits here, it actually drops down into closed business because the improvement is there. Yes, you can do all the other stuff, but if you just get more opens, you'll get more replies. And then you can, improve everything down the line. But 3 times the response rate if you are known to your prospect. And this is a really simple thing to do, but often people are not set up for or not structured in the way to do it. So this canvas I've got on my screen, it's fundamentally about, how can I build, without being a pest, a sales pest, how can I be, or deliberately build that trust and visibility on LinkedIn with my prospects before I outreach? The advantage of this being, they recognize my name, recognize the face, and so because of that, actually it drops down into more replies, more responses, you get where I'm going. But most people don't have their organization of their selling activity or their LinkedIn activity set up this way. So instead of thinking about, oh, I'm going to put a cadence of 4 outreach messages out and hope for replies, that's not the most effective. Actually, what we've found over years of doing this is if you take people on a journey and you change the intensity of that journey over time, you'll actually get better responses. So what does that look like? Well, there's 3 parts to this. There's the connection phase, which is just building that familiarity. They recognize your face, recognize your name. There's loads of ways you can do that on LinkedIn, not just posting content and hoping to go viral. That's not a good use of salespeople's time. Not just posting and hoping people see it, but actually one of the most powerful things you can do, I'll just give you one, is interacting with that prospect in that first message post connection. That is your chance to create a positive first experience. And most people miss it because they think I just have to go in for the kill, or they say some wishy-washy, thanks for connecting, hope you are well. That's a really fun way to get engagement with a prospect. Then because they engage with you in that thank you message, guess what? You get more visibility in the feed. And so it's building a series of actions, maybe 2 or 3, where actually your name pops up in places not associated with selling your stuff. And there's posts you can do that. You can do it with content and commenting and engagement. You can do it with little thank you notes. You can share other people's content with them. There's loads of different ways just to build up a bit of familiarity, builds an advantage. Quick tip here, by the way, your LinkedIn profile picture. So your profile picture on your LinkedIn profile, on your emails, you can actually set a profile picture for your emails so that when you send an email, it shows your profile picture in their inbox. It's important you do that because it's another advantage. They recognize the face in their inbox and recognize it from LinkedIn, and you can kind of tie those 2 together. Same with the footer on your email. If you put your photo in there, you actually get that resonance there too. So 3 or 4 actions just to build that familiarity. Why do people not do this? Because, first reason is they don't want to invest in people who they don't know if they'll buy. Yeah, this is an endemic sales problem that we've created because of automation. Is sellers do not want to invest in prospects unless they know they want to buy, which means often salespeople are not doing the work to cultivate. They're just trying to convert. And so often sellers will just go, I'll fire out the messages, see what bites, and try and close that. That's not a long-term strategy for success because you're basically just scraping the bottom of the barrel. So having a social selling process where the first phase is to build familiarity is critical. Now, if you want a copy of this canvas, just comment below and I'll send you it afterwards as a DM. But you need a process, not just a process where you're going to automate, because you actually need to take people on a journey and you need to actually reply to people and interact with people and all that kind of stuff. So even if you did automate, when you start getting replies, the automation has to stop because it'll make you look silly. So you have this whole situation where actually you could barely automate some of this without it falling over. Yeah. So first few steps is just literally to build that familiarity. Then you can do a phase where you're trying to build interest and see what their interest level is, where their pain points are. Then you go to outreach. That will get you 3 times the response rates than just going in for the kill. And of course, the argument is, well, I could automate it and send 3 times the amount of messages to 3 times the amount of prospects and get the same responses. You could, but that's a diminishing return. And LinkedIn is red hot on automation right now and stopping sellers doing a volume game. So having that pre-engagement, the connection building, familiarity building will improve your response rates. And obviously, the bigger the deal, the bigger, more senior the decision maker, the more strategic you're going to have to be with that, and the more focused you're going to have to be. But what we're seeing is that actually, if you do that, you actually get more responses. So tip number one was the first line is the subject line. Tip number two is build familiarity. If people recognize your name or your face, they are more likely to open your messages, more likely to look, and that cascades down into more responses. Then this final one, which I'll stop sharing for a minute because I think this one is a bit more tricky because it requires, as sellers, you to understand and be able to tailor your value proposition to a customer. And if you can't do that in a simple and easy way, if you're relying on marketing collateral, you're kind of screwed. And I know that sounds awful, but I'll just share this asset now. Just bear with me a second while I put this up. Here we go. So if you're not able to tailor your value proposition to your target prospect's business, you're basically reliant on static marketing collateral. You know, I work with a company and every salesperson had cue cards, and there's nothing wrong with cue cards to give you mental nudges of what you should be saying to who. But what I found was a lot of people, they were crutches. And so they were looking at businesses and I was saying, right, look at this business. How could your services add value to them? What could be something specific? And what I found was they would come out with basically almost word for word the marketing speak that was on the cue cards. They weren't actually looking at that business and going, where could we add a lot of value here? Where could we really ease some of their pain points? And actually thinking about their outreach and how they could tailor it to them. And that is going to be really critical in the going forward for those people who want to sell and kind of be better and be future-proofed from AI. Because AI can generically match up pain points, but it still needs a human to really dig in and tailor it, and that emotion piece. And what we're finding is that actually ultra human, what we call hyper targeted outreach, is actually performing the best. With some of our FTSE large corporate clients getting up to 30% response rates. Because one, the content of that outreach is very, very personal. It's obvious a human did it, right? That's the first piece. Second, it's high effort. In other words, it's not something that can just be spun up with ChatGPT and fired out. Somebody's taken the time to go through it. And third, it has a pattern interrupt in there. So video presentations have done well for a long time, and they're going to be future-proof. We've actually tested this with a few clients where they've tried to AI these, and they get less response than if you do them one by one because of the sense of people can feel whether you understand them, and you know that human pickup piece is not there. So basically what you do is you warm up your prospects for 3 or 4 days. Exactly the same approach as the connection thing we talked about, but then go deep and research them. By all means, use your value prop, but think about how can I tailor my value prop to that prospect, to that business. And then record a short mini presentation. So I've got a PowerPoint that I use, and I just tailor that PowerPoint to different companies. And then you go, right, I'm going to send the video either on LinkedIn or an email or both, and you wait and then follow up. And that has worked really well at getting to people where actually they're really busy, really distracted, but they see you've made the effort and you're speaking to their needs, their challenges in a way that isn't just AI copy and paste slop. Now, Why again are people not doing this? Because it's time. It's time. If you've been used to, I set up an email campaign and it drips 50 emails a day, 50 emails a day, 50 emails a day. Why would you spend time? Why would you spend time spending 3 or 4 minutes or 5 minutes, 10 minutes to send one video to one prospect? It's not very efficient. And this is where we get lost in, do we want the outcome, efficiency or effectiveness of outcome over efficiency of process? And this is the tension that we've got to overcome in this kind of fast-paced AI automated world now. Is a bit like, you know, when Amazon brought out Kindle, everybody thought books would die. Well, books have struggled, but they found their own new place in the market that, you know, is actually very lucrative. In fact, books are more expensive now than they've ever been. And so you have this different way of functioning now where the ultra-human outreach is actually way more effective because it's human. And so if you're selling something and you really want to make an impact on a prospect, doing some of this stuff will actually cascade down from more opens to more replies, more meetings, more opportunities. But fundamentally, it's by doing things in the opposite way to what we have been doing and to where the market is going. Yeah, whenever an opportunity comes up, a zig, there is an equal opportunity created by zagging, doing the opposite. And so AI is really scary about the future of sales because we're not quite sure how all the land's going to lie. But if you're trying to reach prospects who are very distracted, professionally trained at ignoring salespeople, you have to think about, okay, if everybody's going to do this, if I just mirror what the market's doing, if I don't add to anything other than what the market's doing, I am going to be exactly like the market. If I automate 50 messages a day, I'm going to get the response rate of the market getting 50 messages each day. But if you zag, you can actually go, how do I do a pattern interrupt in the subject line? How do I build familiarity beforehand? And then how do I get their attention by being really relevant and really human so I make a huge impact and see that I care, I understand their business? That will get you way more responses than anything else in 2025. And that is future proof. So if you're sat here and, you know, I'm in the same camp as you are of going, we're not quite sure how all of this AI stuff, you know, is going to land. By that, I mean, well, what happens when, you know, our email services, you know, your Outlooks and all of that kind of stuff can start to detect AI outreach? Do they start to put that into spam filters? We have no idea how Google and Outlook and all these services are going to adapt to that kind of pattern of behavior. Whether they're going to be, you know, more aggressive against it, we have no idea. What we do know is that if people get more email, they'll start to stop using it. So all of that kicks in. We also have the AI piece, or the LinkedIn piece and the social media piece, where we go, well, how will LinkedIn feel about people being able to send AI-driven messages? There's already a clamp down on automation. So how do we plan for that? How do we plan that LinkedIn's going to change? To be honest with you, we can't. We can't, because we don't know how these external bodies are going to respond to the change. And so I'm not saying abandon all this stuff, but I would say allocate some of your time to putting some of these methodologies in place so that you are future-proof in terms of your pipeline, in terms of getting responses. Building that familiarity with people so that they recognize your name and are more likely to talk to you. Building that, using the pattern interrupts of the first lines and being more creative in the way you outreach so that you actually get responses. And then going much more relevant and human to actually get responses. High touch, high touch. When everybody's taking their hands off and letting the robots do it, let the automation do it, you either play that game better than other people, because in the inbox, we're not competing against competitors, we're competing against junk mail, irrelevant stuff they've been BCC'd into, CC'd into. Like when we're trying to get attention of prospects, we are competing with everything. So we either do it better and go, how do I be better at this automated stuff than everybody else so I get the better advantage? Or I go high touch. I go ultra high touch. And that's hard for somebody else to compete with you because it's super high touch. It's not quick and easy. And a lot of the lazy salespeople will go that way. The most successful people will go that way. So they're my thoughts on getting responses and increasing response rates. And I've trained teams, sales teams, to do this. I've literally done it in a room where I've said, right, we're going to do some conversation with prospects now, just using these 3 things, 3 techniques, and they're getting more responses, like literally setting up meetings in a room. Why? Because they fully understand, oh my God, if I just be human, if I just understand that prospect really well, I can get responses far better than automating. And from a business case, sales leaders, sales leaders, marketing people, you're not going to like this, but think about it. We know this works. The more personalization we do, the better responses we get. And what we've been guilty of is marketing is all about automation and about scale, but selling is about one-to-one. It's about a seller and the prospect. And I think we've forgotten that. I think we've been guilty of all this tech. We've forgotten that actually a seller's job is to connect with a human being and help them see the opportunity of working together. Marketer's job is to create the demand, create the opportunity for the seller to have those conversations. And I think the blurring lines of outreach, the blurring lines is it's become a marketing activity rather than a selling activity. And that's where the blurring lines have got. So look, I'm happy to share these slides. If you've got any questions about this, you want to know how we can help train your team in any of these concepts or social selling more generally, message me. If you want the copy of the slides, just DM me, Dean Seddon, or comment on the bottom of the video and I will share these slides with you. But thank you so much for joining me today. Appreciate your time. Can you get better responses to outreach? You 100% can, but it's about being more strategic, less automated, less AI driven, and actually really thinking about how do I get the most replies? How do we get the most bang for my buck in terms of outreach to response rates? And that's ultra human, ultra researched, and playing with the tactics to grab those humans' attention. Thank you so much. Any questions? Comment below or DM me for more details.